but the Washington talks were between two countries, Rwanda and Congo, but were never about the problem, the internal problem in Congo. And as my colleague just said, the issue in Congo right now is at 90% internal. It's about Congolese people between themselves. So that's why the solution was not found in Washington.
Well, in a major announcement, the AFC M23 has now said that it is ready to have that sit down with the DRC government in Doha to discuss about finding a lasting peace in Eastern DRC. The AFC M23 has also said that there are some irreducible minimums that the DRC government will have to honor for that sit down to actually happen in Doha. What are these irreducible minimums that the AFC M23 has laid out to the DRC government for it to assent or honor for that sit down to happen? Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you about these irreducible minimums, and I'm also going to tell you about the feasible ones that can happen before this sit down in Doha, and the ones that the M23 perhaps has put out and they seem as if daydreams that cannot be done by the Kinshasa government. Well, this is Bonafide. If you haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe and hit that notification button so that when I release something new on the Eastern DRC crisis, you get notified as soon as possible. Well, the AFC M23 has said that it is ready to have that dialogue with the DRC government in Doha for there to be a lasting peace in Eastern DRC. We know that this journey has two sides. We know of the deal in Washington that has now been signed with the DRC and Rwanda, and which the AFC M23 now says that that deal in Washington only solves about 10%. 90% of the problems in Eastern DRC, according to the AFC M23, will be solved in Doha through that dialogue between the Kinshasa government and the AFC M23. And now the AFC M23 has laid out some irreducible minimums or conditions for there to be a talk between them and the DRC government in Doha. And number one, they've said that there has to be a solemn declaration by Mr. Felix Tshisekedi exposing the political will of his regime to hold direct negotiations with the AFC M23. Number two, repeal of the National Assembly resolution of November 8, 2022. That National Assembly resolution of November 2022 prohibits the DRC government from initiating any negotiations, interaction, or mixing of armed group elements such as the M23 into the National Assembly, police, or other security services. It also formally declares the M23 as a terrorist group. So that is what you're talking about in this number two, when the M23 is saying that there has to be a repeal of the National Assembly resolution of November 8th, 2022, and all other restrictive measures taken by the Kinshasa regime against the AFC M23 to allow for the holding and success of political negotiations. Number three of the irreducible minimums or the confidence building measures, that there should be a cancellation of all death sentences, judicial proceedings, arrest warrants, and bounties placed on the heads of AFC M23 leaders and executives to facilitate political negotiations. Number four, immediate release of all civilians or military personnel and or accused of collaborating with the AFC M23 due to their facial features or biological, professional or friendly or commercial relations with the AFC M23 members. This is to be followed by a compensation for moral and material damages. Number five, end and criminal punishment of all hate speech, often followed by acts of persecution and cannibalism, as well as any manhunts launched against Congolese individuals due to their facial features, spoken languages, and that is Swahili or Kinyarwanda, under the pretext of intelligence collaboration with the AFC M23 or being infiltrators from Rwanda. Number six, cessation of discriminatory acts and denial of nationality to the aforementioned communities. Number seven, authorize free movement of people and goods and issue official documents, especially travel documents, to the population, including reopening of customs systems and banks in areas under the AFC M23 control by the central bank. Number eight, return of seized or looted property from AFC M23 leaders by the Kinshasa government and compensation for damages suffered. Number nine, signature of a bilateral ceasefire agreement between the Kinshasa regime and the AFC M23. Those are the irreducible minimums that the AFC M23 has now tabled to the DRC government that they have to be met for these two parties to have a sit down in Doha. But of all these measures that have been stipulated by the AFC M23, which ones are possible and which ones are just not possible from the DRC government right now? If you're talking about the president coming out and say that we are going to hold talks with the M23, that is number one, as it is documented, a solemn declaration by Felix Tshisekedi exposing the political will of his regime to hold direct negotiations with the AFC M23. That one is possible. It is possible for the president to come out, have a presser and say that, yes, the DRC government is now ready to have talks with the M23. Very easy, doesn't need a lot of consideration from the president's side or from the DRC government. As well as, if you're talking about authorizing free movement of people and goods, issue official documents, that one is possible. The DRC government can say that, yes, we are ready to have or offer services to our Congolese people in the East by giving them free movement of people, issuing official documents, and so forth. They can pose that as giving service back to their own people. That one is something that they can do. But what can't they do? If you're talking about repealing the National Assembly resolution of November 8th, 2022 and all other restrictive measures, that one is not possible because it will need an entire legislative procedure for that to happen because that is an act. It has been passed by the Congolese Parliament. The National Assembly has passed that. It has criminalized the M23. That clause has said that the M23 is a terrorist organization. For you to have that parliamentary sitting to rescind that is very, very hard. And we are talking about time, the essence of time before these two go into a meeting and sit and discuss. We need that to happen very fast. So if you're saying that a repeal of that section is not possible right now, but what can happen is that there can be a suspension of that act to freeze it for this moment to happen. So that is what can happen if you're talking about number two, the law that was passed on November 8th, 2022, that mentions the AFC M23 as a criminal organization, as a terrorist organization, and that people from the AFC M23 are not allowed to go into the security services of the government. That pointer will be hard to achieve. Another pointer that will also be very hard to achieve by the Kinshasa government with the cancellation of all death sentences, judicial proceedings, arrest warrants, and bounties placed on the heads of the AFC M23 leaders. This is hard to achieve. If you're talking about the cancellation, proper cancellation of all these, then rights groups are going to be on the back of the president. They're going to say, these people committed crimes against victims that are well known, people who are out there, they are suffering because of these people. Then you want to cancel all the sentences from these people because you want to have a negotiation where it's a justice between all these. So to achieve that will be a headache for the DRC government and cannot be done just at the president's desk because there is a need for a sit down. Justice will have to prevail with or without the talks. Another pointer that is very hard to achieve by the DRC government before the talks are held is the end and criminal punishment of all hate speech, because we are talking about hate speech. It needs a lot of legal reforms that need a lot of time, and we don't have that much time before these two go and have a sit down in Doha. Well, other pointers like the return of seized goods also are very hard to achieve by the Kinshasa regime because that will be seen as legitimizing the wealth that the rebels had gotten, which the Kinshasa government is saying that they were gotten illegally. So these are very tricky conditions that have been given to the DRC government by the AFC M23. Some are very hard to achieve. Few of them are very easy to achieve, actually. President going out and saying that we are ready to have talks with the M23, that is pretty easy. But some of these, and many of them, are very hard to achieve right now if you're talking about the timeline right now by the DRC government. Well, I will continue to keep you informed of the latest of what is happening in Eastern DRC regarding the Doha talks. Keep it bona fide.